What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rawstocks. Today we're going to take a look at the Spider ETF, the S&P 500. This is new. We normally do Tesla analysis, but I'm going to start bringing you guys some other stocks as well. So we're going to look at SPY. We're going to look at where price came from, where price ended today, and where price is likely to head tomorrow. I'm not going to go drop down into all the time frames like you guys are used to, so this is going to be a much shorter video. But I do want to look at the 1 hour time frame here on SPY. SPY is the ticker, right? And we can see that when we had these lows come in, as we set a divergence on the RSI with a lower low on price, and we had multiple point divergence on the RSI right there, right, as price continued to set a low. And we had our RSI continuing to set higher highs. We got a bottom, right? We set a 1 hour order block, and those order blocks are found in down close candles before the reversal, or in this case it would be a black candle or a bearish candle before the move changed directions. Okay, that became our bullish order block, and we eventually traded back down into that order block, and then since then we've seen a bottom and price go running. Okay, so the things I want to draw your attention to is that we have an unbalanced price range down at 424.69. Okay, and that came from a micro change of character that happened from this peak over to this candle here. Okay, and that is a micro change of character on structure, and you would see it on a smaller time frame where that actual change of character happened. We'll have it listed here on the 1 hour time frame, and it just goes across at that 424.69, right, which also happens to coincide with some confluence right around where the consequent encroachment of this fair value gap is on the 1 hour time frame. Okay, and as price ran up, we had we had fair value gaps being painted on the 1 hour chart. Again, for those of you who follow me, you know the fair value gaps can be good entry points, either once or later, once they're traded back into. And then we had a larger change of character happen just during today's price action. Okay, so now we've taken the high of this peak here. We have a larger change of character where we can see there's a clear trend reversal happening because we've taken this peak now. Okay, and if you look down on the RSI, you start to see we are approaching overbought territory. RSI is starting to get up there, has not quite got to 70, but it's getting pretty close. We have a 14 period moving average on our RSI that is just walking us up here since this divergence happened and we crossed back over the control line. Okay, and so what are we looking for price to potentially do? Well, we have this 1 hour fair value gap that's above, and we know that fair value gaps are magnetic, and so we are likely looking for price to run up there, but that doesn't mean we're going to do a straight shot right into the fair value gap. Okay, and we might see some selling and then some continued upside. We could also see some divergence set up, like a bearish divergence, where we set a high, then we trade up, we get another high, right, into the fair value gap, and then we get a sell down. Is that going to be a larger sell down? Is it just going to be a correction before we head back up? We are looking at this trend line here that was found on the daily chart. So I'll pop into the daily chart so you can see where that is anchored to. So it's anchored to the high up here back in July, and then anchored to the high September 1st, and then we nearly tested it on September 14th, right? And so we have that trend of resistance. That's a bearish trend that we're looking at if we take out the 1 hour fair value gap. Okay, we also have this change of character here that we might be coming back to balance some of this price range out, right? We did trade right back up through it, but all of this is inefficiently delivered price to the downside. That leaves the fair value gap, right? And so at this point, because we are approaching overbought territory, we are looking for a move potentially up here, but we also could see the correction happen first and then the move up, right? But we do know that price is going to want to be drawn into this fair value gap above, and so we are watching that. We're probably looking in the next couple of weeks to be at 435. We're at 432 and some change right now, right? And then even up to 440. And then potentially, depending on where price is when we run a test of this resistance line up in the 445 range, right? And I do ultimately think we are heading up to this order block that's at 451 up to 453.63, okay? Because order blocks, just like fair value gaps, they are also magnetic. So we'll go ahead and drop a magnet in there as well. And we will say that we're probably going to take out, obviously, we'll take out the fair value gap here first. We will look to test this trend line. And then when we do break it, we will head into this order block. Now, if you look at structure, as we kind of come back down here, even if it's kind of choppy as we head up, it does kind of set up a cup and handle look, right? And so you can see if we head up, even if there's chop in there, we're looking at a cup and handle. Could we come back down and test this trend line, ultimately head up even higher into the above order block up in the 460 range? So that's definitely possible. We know orders sit in order blocks. We know there's liquidity in order blocks. And so those are going to be our targets. But first we have to break this downtrend, this bearish downtrend of resistance. So right now what we're watching for on the 1 hour time frame is we're watching for this fair value gap to hold, not seeing price come back below 430. If we give up that, we're looking at the sell side liquidity here at this bottom and this fair value gap in the 1 hour. That's in the mid 420s, right? And then we have an unbalanced price range with another fair value gap below. Now we have this order block and we've already traded into it, so we know that orders have been filled here. But if we trade back down, we could see another reaction much higher also from that order block. I don't think we're going to trade back down into that order block right now, but it is there. We also have, a potential for a inverted head and shoulders look that has started to develop, right? So if we kind of do one of these guys, we got a nice clear head, right? We got a fairly level neckline. Could we trade back down, balance this price range, even trade back down to the order block? I don't think we're going to get there, right? And then run up into the fair value gap. That's entirely possible. A lot will depend on what yields are doing, what DXY and the dollar is doing, and what some of the other market movers are doing, right? But right now, we've seen SPY act incredibly resilient after we set this low. Although SPY was, looking pretty weak as this whole sell-off happened, and you saw tech kind of lead the rally, not go as low, but we do have a nice recovery coming out of SPY. So do we see this inverted head and shoulders play out, come back into one of these fair value gaps? Possibly. But it doesn't have to play out. We could straight up head into the above bearish fair value gap and then come back down and then test this trend line. So we'll be watching to see if this plays out. Right now it has a nice look with these fairly even neckline, but that doesn't mean that we're going to sell off and then have a rally. So we'll be seeing if that plays out, but if not, we'll just take it off and we'll invalidate it, say it was not a inverted head and shoulders structure as price continues to develop. Right, again, we're watching RSI on the 1 hour that starts to get to overbought. And then let's drop down into like a 15-minute time frame, and that's the only one I'll look at here, right? If we take off the change of character that we manually entered there, you can see there is a change of character that happened during today's price where we took the previous peak here, traded slightly above and started to come down a little bit near close, right? But again, on the 15-minute chart, we do have a fair value gap, right? So looking to keep this open for a bullish move. We are also in overbought territory. We are also setting up a bit of a divergence, or even maybe you could just call it a top. It's a slight, bearish divergence where we got higher high, lower high on the RSI, right? So could that be an indicator that we're at a top here? We're going to come back down and correct. Quite possibly. So we'll be watching to see how that develops. Again, if we do start to sell off, we're closing this fair value gap. We're coming down to test and take this liquidity here. The rest below, we can go ahead and mark that on our chart as a horizontal level, right here. It would be testing that fair value gap. We're going to label it as sell side liquidity. Okay, and so if we were to come back down, would we test that? Right. If we did do that, we would be starting to set up what could be also a head and shoulders. So it could be down for a bigger flush, back down into the order block. And if that's set up, we'd say right shoulder, right head, come back down, take liquidity, bounce back up, right? Right shoulder, and then sell off into the order block. Totally possible. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we are going to push up into this fair value gap. I don't think that will play out necessarily, but we could see a minor correction as RSI cools off, maybe back down to the 50, right? Or even if we gap open and then see us run in, or gap down open and then see us run into the above bearish fair value gap. Right? So I'll go ahead and take that off, but just things that we're watching, right? Things below. Fair value gaps, order block, unbalanced price range, sell side liquidity, right? Above, we got the bearish fair value gap. We also got buy side liquidity that rests in previous highs. Okay, and then we have this order block here above. I'm not going to say there's a whole lot of liquidity here, and we already took this one here when we had the change of character. So as far as upside targets go, I'd say we got the one buy side liquidity right here. Label it as such. Okay, fair value gap, trend line, order blocks above on the 15-minute time frame. So there's your targets. Hope that helps out as far as some of your SPY analysis. I do think we are ultimately heading higher as we start to run into earnings, the beginnings of earnings season, and we'll just have to see how earnings ends up playing out and how that affects the overall market, as well as the conflicts that are going on worldwide, what the bond market's doing, what DXY is doing, what's oil doing. We're watching all of those too as potential indicators because they definitely have an effect on SPY's market price. So I hope this has been helpful. If you guys like the content, please like and subscribe, share with all your friends. There's some stuff in the description below as far as links where you can find me in a Discord. Also merch shop that we have that helps support the Rawstocks channel. So check it out if you would. I'd really appreciate it, and I thank you guys for all the support.